Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Another fantastic day for an interview. Yes. And today is a good day because I've got Gina Rolkowski with me. Gina is a woman who, like me, has gone through a lot of darkness in her life and is now on a path to make sense of that suffering and to share her experience with others so that maybe they don't have to go through a long period of darkness, but actually start to heal by actually talking about those hard times in one's life. And Gina, I'm so grateful to have you on my show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Stefan. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor. Oh, Gina, when you were a young girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know what I really wanted to be? I wanted to be the president. And, yes, I did. And I really thought and it's so funny. I look back now. Why did I want to be the president? Because I really felt like the president had all the power to change everything. And I just thought, if I could be the president, then I could make the world, I guess I could make my parents different. I could make the world different. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to be the president. That's how I'm going to make a difference. Excellent. So I never thought, now, no, thank you.
Okay. No, absolutely.
Not for me.
And that's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have got about 320 million people in the United States, and it comes down to two, and these two are those two? You're kidding me.
Yeah.
So no.
I know.
So no, the question then, but having said that, that already gives away so much, because we are talking about a childhood that you would have not liked to have chosen in the past.
Absolutely not.
Yet so many of us who do experience trauma in childhood become very controlling. We want to control everything in our life. And already for you at that stage in your life to say, hey, I want to be the president so I can control everything. Well, if there's not a giveaway, I know, your story.
I look back on that now, and it's like, wow. You could determine children's future based on what they want to be or what their childhood is like, asking them what they want to be when they grow up, right?
Exactly. And things probably did not turn out like that. I didn't have to go through layers of Secret Service agents to get to you. So maybe, so this was probably a good thing. So maybe.
So it didn't work out. I would just, darn it.
Maybe, I mean, each story is unique, and each story of trauma in the childhood is unique, though it has so many similarities. What was your story? How does your story start?
Well, the funny thing about my story is that I didn't remember my story until I was in my 40s. But when I started having flashbacks, when I was being sexually abused growing up. And I mean, I always had, when I go back and look at my childhood, at 6 years old, I was in and out of the hospital with stomach aches and, and pains in my stomach. And, the doctor said she just wants attention, and so at 6 years old, I'm being gaslit, and told, you're making stories and all this stuff. And then when I was 14, I actually started having seizures, and they were initially, I was treated as epileptic seizures, but looking back now, I realized they were most likely dissociative. My body was keeping a score, and I was dissociating. And so I had years and years of seizures. I had 20 some years of having seizures from the time I was 14 to 30 something. Was that right? Yeah. So I don't even, it seems like yesterday, but at any rate, I mean, growing up for me was, I don't remember a lot of, I know where I lived, I know where I went to school, but there's so much of it that I don't really remember, because when you are a sexual abuse survivor, your body, thank God, has a tendency to shut it down. So I had dissociative amnesia for years, but growing up, it was that I do remember, there was no emotional safety. There was no talking about feelings, it was all put on the, and make it, everybody had to look good, play the part, the perfect family, my parents volunteered, but, my mother was like a closet alcoholic, and I didn't even realize that she was an alcoholic until I went in recovery myself and started learning what women and alcoholism and all that. I thought, oh my God, my mother was an alcoholic, right? So there was not a lot of space for anything other than keeping the secret of what was really going on in that house. So it was very lonely, very empty, scary, frightening, just pretty darn awful.
When you look back, when did that all start?
I would probably say, the funny thing is this was years ago before I started having flashbacks. I remembered the time I was like in the tub with my father when I was like 4. And I have a twin sister, and I remember my mother like freaking out, and that's not appropriate now that I like, you don't get naked in the tub with your 4-year-old daughter. Like, that's weird. And so I think it really started very early on for me, being very, very young.
It's interesting that you quote this dissociative amnesia. Dissociation means that your body wants to beam itself to another place.
Right.
Your mind basically does an ostrich and does really put the head in the sand and say, nope, that actually has never occurred. And it puts a veil of lack of memory over it, like a veil of secrecy, so to speak, because it says, actually, you're going through such a hard time. Maybe
it's
you
too
don't
much.
need. That's right. It's too much. If you really remember every single fact, then you burn. You burn up. You explode. Boom. And this is something that actually a lot of survivors do go through, and a lot of people do go through.
Oh yeah, it's not even it's a really grateful thing. Very helpful thing that the body does to protect us. And then the thing is when I didn't remember, then you start thinking you're crazy. And that's the whole. I must be crazy. I'm a loser. And the shame and all. And so it's a challenge because it's protecting you, and yet everything else in my life was indicating that something wasn't right. And the only thing I could take from that and assume was that it must be me, especially as a child, because as a child, you don't have internal language till you're 8. And so everything that happens around you, you internalize and becomes like yourself, so to speak. And so it was just that I'm not good enough. I'm crazy. I can't trust myself. Like it's such a horrible way to live, especially as a child.
How were your grades at school? How did your
But believe it or not, I had pretty good grades in school. I think there was this. I think that my body, my adrenaline, just like because I was a rule follower. I didn't. I got my homework done. I did well. When I got to high school, I went to an all-girl Catholic high school, and I really do think it was a very, very small school, and I do think that. That was actually very helpful for me because the first high school I went to was, co-ed, and it was a lot more people, and it was just so much for me. And that's actually where I had my first seizure. So I think that as I got older, it became more and more difficult for my body, to not. So, high school was a bit of a challenge, but my grades were always really good. I felt disappointed if I got a B. So I always did that. It's kind of funny that, because lots of times you think, you just slack off. But I think the fear of, the desire to like make my parents proud, make them happy. Like if I get an A and I'm a great student, will you love me? You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And it didn't seem to really matter.
Well, there is that argument there. The other argument is to actually see the joy in the eyes of the teacher when he hands to you, hey, that was an A or an A minus. And that appreciation, that feeling of, yes, at a very early stage, that feeling of, It's a beautiful feeling. I don't
It's
want to put it.
accomplishment. I was proud, and
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
just like, oh, like there's a part of me that's actually okay, and I'm really doing well at this. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah.
But my grades were pretty good.
Oh, yeah, same here. Whilst I did not have the sexual abuse or the really nasty physical abuse, I don't think
Right,
I had a great childhood. And
right.
for me, once I discovered the the power and the joy of actually getting good grades, then it was like an addiction at that stage. And it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
like you said, I was querying every single minus or anything.
Oh, I mean, I could, yep. Oh my
And
God,
it was,
A minus was like anything with a minus on it was just like,
oh, that's
instead of
right.
going, I got an A. Like, I mean, oh gosh,
Exactly. Oh dear. And but that is us. That is when your childhood is not so great. You show these kind of habits, this kind of
yeah.
traits, shall I say?
Hmm,
So, and
hmm.
that is normal. That is your brain searching for that security, that control, that all that. And I mean that works for a bit. So here you were at school
Right.
and getting a little, getting really good grades, etc. But then these bloody hormones come along for boys and for
Yeah.
girls. So how were your
Yes.
teenager years? How did that play out?
I mean, I really, like I said before, I think because I went to an all-girl Catholic school, I didn't have to deal with boys that much. And I guess it was, gosh, I was in junior. I guess I was a junior, late junior or senior when I really had my first kind of boyfriend. I don't know, and he, um, and I ended up getting pregnant at 19.
Oh,
Yeah, it was actually right after I had brain surgery. So it was, yeah. So I think that, and I do think this was during the time of school, but over the summer, we used to have a house down at the shore in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey. So I spent the summers down there, but there were times when, I mean, all I wanted as a teenage girl was like a boy to pay attention to, and it's like any attention was better than no attention. And so there were, things that I did that I wish I hadn't done, but I look back now and I actually have a lot of compassion for myself because, I was trying to get my needs met. You know what I mean? I needed to feel loved. I needed to feel safe and connected. And so I did all that I knew. And it's funny because you would think, being sexually abused, you wouldn't want to, move into that kind of arena, so to speak, as a teenager. But what happens is, you become hypersexual or hypo, where you don't do anything. But, I was just I'd make out with anybody who paid attention to me. I wanted a boyfriend so bad. I just wanted somebody to love me. And so that definitely became something that was a challenge because I would just anybody pretty much.
alcohol. How did that come
I
in?
didn't, I never, it's funny. I was actually pretty scared of alcohol. My biggest addiction was the drugs that I got addicted to as I got a little older. The doctors started putting me, when I started having seizures, they tried all sorts of stuff. But eventually, I guess I was in my 20s when they started putting me on things like, Ambien and Klonopin and Xanax and then I was in a car accident in my early 30s and they put me on Percocet and oxycodone. And so I never was a big drinker, but I sure took the pills. So I ended up majorly addicted to, any drug out there. And I assumed the doctors knew what they were doing. So I just took them, and obviously it wasn't enough, 1, 2 Xanax, higher doses of Xanax didn't help, so it was like, I just started kind of mixing the drugs and it didn't really take the edge off. And I called my doctor and I said, I think I might have a problem because I took 17 Percocet when I tried to kill myself in 2003.
Uh,
So alcohol was not a big issue for me because it kind of scared me. But yeah, so as a child, as an adult, young adult, I never got into like parties and things like that. It scared me too much.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it
Yeah.
the paradox in there? You
Oh,
would do
yeah.
anything to get love. You would anything to be the. When I say center of attention, that's wrong. It is more the need to
Well,
feel
needed to save
loved.
connection. Yeah, I
Exactly.
need connection, and so I didn't
Exactly.
know. I'll
So
do what I need to.
you go for any kind of risk there, yet there is this hesitation to alcohol, but the same pressure is still there, the anxiety is still there, the pain is still there. And
Yeah.
guess what? These painkillers, they are really good in dealing with a broken bone. And they are also really good when it comes to dealing with a broken soul, because again, you can suddenly go, the
Oh,
pain
yeah.
is so much better. And that's the crazy thing. And it is, and the doctors who were looking after you, they were doing their best. They saw that you were in pain, and they linked your pain to the pain in after the surgery, or they linked the need for medications to the seizures. So all of these things, it's very understandable that doctors try to help. That's what we do. That's what we
Right.
do. I want to make people feel better. I want to make people
Right.
better. So that's what doctors do. But the problem is that, of course, if we listen to you as a patient, and therefore, if you tell us it hurts and it hurts there, not
Right.
telling me that it really hurts there because you don't have the insight, then
Right. Exactly. Well, that's the other thing. Like all the years, there was like all sorts of issues. Like, and it's like one of my favorite books is The Body Keeps the Score, which is all about basically how the body holds and experiences
yeah.
and manifests trauma in a physical way when we don't deal with it, the pain, the emotional pain that it causes. So there was always something going on with me, and that, people, oh, she has attention. And it's like, no, it's like my body's just keeping it. It's funny. Ever since I worked through a lot of this, I haven't had any pain, nothing, like I'm in really good health. But I sure wasn't, because my body was just like, man, you got to work through this.
And people don't realize. I in the past, I ran a large pain clinic, and as part of the intake, I made all my patients fill out questionnaires. And that was a bit of a joke in my industry because my questionnaires were substantial. And so the patients had to fight to get to see me, so to speak. But one of the questions is, have you been abused in the past?
Right.
And
Wow.
I had a patient coming to me with a medical notes actually like that, and she had
Yeah.
constant tummy trouble, constant pain in her stomach for 20 years, and she had undergone so many investigations and operations, and nothing was ever found.
Right.
And she came in with a support person. We said hello, and very, very early on in our discussions, she said, I just want to stop here for a moment, and I want to thank you, because no one has ever asked me if I was abused. No
Yes.
doctor, of the many dozens of doctors I've seen and specialists, no one has
Wow.
ever asked that. And I said, I'm pleased that you say that. Tell me a bit more. And
Right.
it turned out that her young husband basically was physically very dominant and violent, and
Right.
had made it a point of kneeing her into the stomach during their fights, during their things, because he knew there would be very little evidence left. So here
Wow.
was this whole story that the moment we put the torchlight onto that fact,
Right.
her medical journey stopped. Her
Yeah.
pain got much better down the
Yeah.
line because she actually didn't need my medications. She needed to explore that trauma.
Yeah.
But I will never forget that. Thank you,
Wow.
doctor. You're the only one in 20 years of searching.
Yeah, I don't
for
think I've
reasons.
ever had a doctor ask me that question.
And
Ever. That's incredible that you had the insight to know how important a question like that is.
yeah. And maybe, and yeah, true. And maybe I had the training and maybe I was interested, but maybe also, maybe there were things in my past that I didn't realize
Right.
that needed to be healed. Again,
Right.
in my job, I was very good in picking those things up in anyone else. When I looked
Yes.
into the mirror, oh, no, I'm all good. I'm all good. No, thank you very much. Depression, me? No. PTSD, what are you talking about? Okay, so, but again, I guess I didn't want to distract from your story, but I want to
No,
add to
that's
your
just a
stories
beautiful story.
how important that is, and that there is a saying: the issues lie in the tissues, and so therefore,
Oh,
why
that's
not?
interesting.
Why not? And it's just a paraphrasing of what you have described.
Right.
We need to ask us so many questions, and as doctors, we're under such a production pressure. You come in, you have got a pain. Okay, let's look at why you have got the pain. There's
Right.
a reason. There you go. Take the tablet.
Right.
And that is normal. There is in the Western medical systems. It is, yeah. I mean, if at that time, if someone had said to you, the tablets, they're quite nice, but I want you to see a psychologist, how would you have responded?
Well, the funny thing was, I had been in therapy since I was probably like 14 or 15. And I'm trying, like, we actually even went as a family. But my dad would literally do like the exact opposite with what the therapist would tell us to do, and so, but it was funny because it was actually my neurologist who suggested that I see a neuropsychiatrist. And I didn't know anything. I mean, I was in such a fog at that time that I never knew, like, oh, neuropsychiatrist, that's, and he was the one that put me on Klonopin. Gosh, this was, I don't know, probably early 90s, maybe. So it was like 10 years or more before I even went in recovery. But I didn't know, like, I didn't realize that like Xanax was a benzodiazepine and it could be addictive and Klonopin. Like, I never knew. I just went, okay. I just figured it was like an aspirin. You take it when you need it, and that's that. But unfortunately, what happened was the pain, the issues, were just, the doses had to be increased. They had, and then it was something else had to be added. And after a while, nothing really did the trick. In fact, I was on Klonopin and Xanax and all the other drugs when I tried to kill myself. I mean, the pain just got so bad, there was nothing that could take care of it.
Was at that time, did you have already the realization what the cause of the pain was? You felt the pain, and the pain was tremendous.
I got, when I got pregnant, my parents were, good Catholics. So you had to get married because you couldn't have it, right? That made everything better. I mean, oh my God, like, what the hell? Anyway, so I married, and he was my boyfriend at the time, but he was a sociopath, like narcissistic sociopath, horrible, abusive, and so for me, I thought that a lot of the issues I was having were related to that. So I had basically attributed any issue that I had to that relationship and how awful that was. It didn't, it never really occurred to me that, like, I had so many issues all the years prior to even meeting this person. But I attributed all of that to that relationship. And so when I ended up in the hospital, in the psych ward again, because I had been there several other times before, but I was down in Florida now. That was the first time I was actually diagnosed with PTSD. And I was actually relieved because I felt like somebody finally could put a name on something, you know. And I just kept saying to the doctors, like, I just want to get better. Like, I just want to get better. Like, but nobody's, you know, I end up in the psych ward and nobody helps me, and they put you on suicide watch and you just like stay there. And it was like, you guys know how awful I feel. Is this it? You just keep me for 3 days and like goodbye. Yeah. So when I was diagnosed, you know, they gave me the name of a really good trauma-informed, like, therapist, and I started to work with her, and she was really, really helpful.
Beautiful.
You know, she understood that, like, PTSD at the time, I don't even know if complex PTSD was actually a thing, because this was like 2003, but she understood that this, like, the PTSD was not just like one event that happened. It was you know, complex PTSD is chronic. Complex PTSD, your sense of self is just gone. It isn't just that you're hypervigilant. It's your entire system is always on hypervigilance. Your sense of self is completely gone. You know, your lack of trust, security, connection, ability to do anything other than survive is pretty much nil.
You've beautifully described it there, because that is something that many people misunderstand. PTSD, you must see your friend being blown up with pieces of blood on your face. And if that doesn't happen, then no, you can't have PTSD. And that is a very simplistic and strange thought, but it's understandable with Hollywood and with those kind of influences there. In reality, you're so right. It is, many of us have lived lives where there was a great deal of uncertainty and a great deal of things happening that actually your body interpreted as a threat to its life, as a constant threat. And no surprise that there are the flow-on effects of that, the dissociation, the trying to pretend I'm not there, and plus all the somatization. So soma means body, somatization means that you internalize, and literally that your body comes out with symptoms of your psychological pain, in often headaches, in tummy pains for the women, in gynecological pains.
Yes, right.
Exactly. So these are all classical things, and this is something that a good family physician, a good GP will look at. And again, there is that there's my plea to all of my listeners: please make a good relationship, create a good relationship with one doctor who gets to know you and who knows you at your good times and also sees you at your bad times, who knows your story honestly, so that when you finally come to a realization, which inevitably happens in our lives, that that shit has happened and you need to deal with it, then at least you're not starting from scratch, but you can actually say, hey, you know all my medical history, and now I've just had that realization here, that has happened in the past. And then suddenly his lights might go up and say,
That's actually what happened with me with my doctor in Florida. He saw me at my worst, and I went to him and told him everything. And he became one of my biggest supporters. I mean, he used to bring other women in when I would come in and go, come and meet Gina. Like, oh my God, like she turned her life around and you need to meet her. But Dr. Pinsky was like, he was like an angel. I mean, he just was supportive. He cared. I hated, it was one of the hardest things I had to do when we moved out of Florida to lose him as my doctor. I just loved him. So I think that's a really, and I would say shop around, because I've had to do that even up here, because it's, you really do need to, first of all, you deserve to have somebody in charge of your medical, all your medical issues who can truly understand your whole self.
Absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful to say that. I'm so I get a warmth coming over me there, because that is the ideal. And why do I know that? Because I didn't have a GP for the better part of my life. I thought I know it all myself. Hey, I'm a specialist. I know it all.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Bullshit.
Oh my.
Oh. And then one of the requirements when I went into rehab, one of the requirements was that you have to have a fixed relationship, and you meet with your GP initially every month, I think, and then every 3 months,
Really?
and then things like that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
And that is
wow.
all because it makes sense, especially for a doctor, because we are smart asses. Most of us, we think we know it all, and then add our upbringing, our control freak, our things like that. So, oh please, I
A
mean, we have
recipe for disaster.
no. You're talking to one. Yes.
Yeah. I
Disaster.
I didn't realize you were a doctor until we started talking.
I
Yeah,
mean,
wow,
anesthetist.
you must have been like GP. Oh, they're like the bottom of the barrel of the doctors. I mean, come on.
Ouch, ouch. But yes, there is that. There is sometimes that thing. Having said that, if any GP is listening here, I want to say that I take my hat off to you, because you are there and you need to know so much, and you need to be on guard so much, because 98%, 95% of your work is people just having mundane kind of things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're the 2-5% which go boom if you don't know, if you're not constantly aware. I don't know how you guys do the job. I adore you, and I have got the best GP, Andrew McMenamin. If you listen, okay, I've outed you. I've outed you. You're a good man. So, and that's what I'm trying to convey here, and what you are already doing. I mean, I'm jumping a little bit forward, but you have created in your life, you've created a team of people that were helping you. You were open to therapy, which is lovely. I'm in New Zealand, people don't go to therapy. It's not, or not so common as in the United States. Okay,
Really?
so
Oh,
yeah,
that's a
there's
shame.
no, there is. We have got far more a taboo, far more a hesitation there
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
to go to a psychologist. There is still, oh no, they must think me mad, kind of a thing, and
Yeah.
it
Oh,
is
that's so
that,
sad.
yeah, and that's a constant thing that I try to break that taboo, to actually say, guys, if you look at CEOs of top companies, they all have got their coach, their performance coach.
Right.
That's a psychologist, for lack of a better word.
Right, right. Yes, that is
Exactly. And
true.
the same Olympians, and sportsmen. They all will have coaches and performance guys, and they all surround themselves with people who know more about the mind, the psyche, but also the body.
Right.
And here you are, my listener here, and you think, oh my God, I've got all that pain here, and here. And it is, yeah, no, we need help, and we need help much, much earlier than most
Well,
of
yeah, and we
us.
do so much for our bodies, but like our
My-
spirit and our mind I always tell people we're body, mind, and spirit. If you're only going to focus on the body, you're still going to be 2/3 messed up. Like,
Oh, I love it. I love it, Gina.
I mean, right. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, you're like walking like this, like, oh, I've got to, but like,
I love it.
you can't just do one piece of you. You
Love it.
are, you would run to the doctor if you had a broken leg. You have a broken heart, go to a therapist, go to a good trainer who can help you heal that, and as far as your spirit, nurture that relationship with God. But like, people just think it's so much easier to, and I do think you're right. Like, there's this shame tendency of like, I'm weak. I'm ashamed. I don't need help. Like, I don't want to be vulnerable because that makes me weak. And, and it's almost like a natural kind of selection type thing, like the animals in the wild, they, have a baby cub that has an issue, they will leave it alone because we don't want them, so, but we're not like animals in the wild, we can nurture each other. We deserve to be nurtured and healed. And it drives me insane. Like, it's one of my biggest pet peeves when I listen to people who are just always focused on their body. It's like, oh, like I eat well, I do this, I work out, I like detox. I take all these supplements. Well, like, what do you do for your spirit and your mind? Well, I mean, it's like, okay, that's just another trauma issue. Like, you're just literally creating, it's a trauma response. You're trying to control your life with these other things. And it's like, oh, yeah, like, oh, but my back still hurts. Well, no, duh. I mean, no, fucking duh.
So true.
It's just like, no. I just have to like take another bath and Epsom salts, or no, I'm going to try this new supplement.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah.
Knock your socks off. Have at it.
Exactly. I think that we all are like that, and many of us are not ready to hear, though, that there might be other things that need to be taken care of rather than a physical thing. For you, it was hidden in the shadows as well for a long time. What actually brought out the realization that you need to change your direction?
Well, I would say, gosh, I mean, my mother in 2003, I tried, like in February, I tried to kill myself, and I obviously wasn't successful at that. But my mother was dying at the time and died probably 10 days after I tried to kill myself. And that's when I really started like mixing the drugs, because there was so much grief. Like, it was so awful. It was my first experience, like, really, and when I realized that my options, like, I was honestly brought up as a Catholic to think if you commit suicide, you die and go to hell. So for me, my only reason I made a phone call when I was literally laying in bed with all the pills in my body was because I thought, oh my gosh, I might be on my way to hell. And that's a really big risk to take. And I thought, I better call somebody. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I was like, that's still a really big risk. And when I after that, I realized that for me, my life was only going to be a living hell if I didn't do something different. And so for me, when I started seeing that therapist, who was very, she gave me another packet, like you talked about, and she was like, I have a waiting list of people. If you don't want to do the work, I'm telling you, like, I'll cut you out. So I was like, this is different for me. Like, she seemed to know what she was doing. So I was like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll do anything, and I, that's when she suggested that I go inpatient and whatever. But like, for me, it was the realization of the fact that my life was going to be so awful, like really awful, if I didn't try to do something different. And so from that time on, I just was like, I just want to get better. I just want to get better. Like, I just want to, and so I embraced, when I started going to AA, and, I was like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, because I didn't want my life to be miserable. And I was excited that there was an opportunity that it might not be, So, I got a sponsor, I worked the steps, I went to meetings, I led meetings, I did, I went to therapy 2 times a week, anything and everything I could possibly do, because to me, I just knew that my life was my choice. I didn't, and I also knew it came down to like, do it or die. And I knew dying wasn't an option unless, of course, something happened to me. So I was like, God, this really, damn it, like this. So that's kind of where my was just like, and it was, I think it was very exciting for me that there was hope. And so for me, I really embraced, anything and everything that would give me some hope that something could be different.
When you got admitted, was that an inpatient rehab, or was it inpatient psych ward? What was that? It was an inpatient program for women who've been sexually abused. Beautiful. And so, and I knew, I guess I would say sexually abused. Yeah. But it was, or abuse, I guess, of any kind. But
looking back now, it wasn't the best place to go because it was only 2 weeks. Oh my God. But they also wanted me to do outpatient, like intensive outpatient. Yeah. And I didn't, and I live in a halfway house and all this. And I was like, that is not for me. The world works. So to me, everything seemed very permanent. You know what I mean? Like, to be in a halfway house meant that was it for me. That was all I was worth. It was, so I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't need to do that. And I literally went back to school that January and got into graduate school and got my graduate degree, and ended up as a grad research assistant and published a couple things with some professors and ended up teaching. But type thing. It was really like a program to help, work through the issues that I had.
It's interesting. When you were in this inpatient treatment, how did you get into that? Who actually said, I really recommend you? Or was it something where they actually said, you have to go? Or how did it work?
I mean, it was my therapist recommended it early on. And I kept going, I don't need that. Like, no, that's not for me, because I had the stigma of like, my brothers were 19, 15, and 14 when my twin sister and I were born. So they were big hippies. Like, we grew up and my parents fought with them about hippies and drugs. So for me, like, I was like, no. I don't, that's for other people. Like, I'm not a drug addict hippie, no. But what happened was when I started mixing the pills and realizing like this was not working, the pain, this was not helping me at all, because I literally thought to myself, I'll just start abusing the drugs. What the hell? Like, and I talked to her about that. And I was always very honest, and I still am even to this day in therapy. But she said, I went to her and I said, I think that program might be something we should talk about. And I wasn't allowed to go there until I had it was off all of the benzodiazepines. You couldn't go on those, and I ended up weaning myself off of the Xanax and all the other drugs for like 8 weeks or more before I went inpatient. And then when I got there, I was still on the Klonopin, which I thought was an anti-seizure medication, but I hadn't had a seizure in like 2 years. So they were like, you got to go upstairs and detox off the Klonopin before you can come here. And I mean, I wanted to run so fast, but I did it. It was horrible. It scared the bejesus out of me because I was just but I did it. And so that was, yeah.
And again, that is very understandable. Clonazepam is a drug that helps seizures and works really well for that. At the same token, it is the group of benzodiazepines, which are the ones to take the anxiety away, but also change the way maybe we lay down memories and we deal with memories. So therefore, if you want to do some work on those kind of things, and you're still in not a haze, but yes, a psychological haze, so to speak, and a bit of altered perception due to a very good, valid medication for what you were on, then it's understandable. And it just shows how complex life is when by the time you seek help. It's not just, let's go in there 2 weeks and then I'm renewed.
Oh my gosh, I was so sure. I remember going up to the director and going, listen, because when I got there, there were other women who had been there. Like they would like brag about how many, this is my like 7th time being here. And I remember being like, oh my God, like, I don't ever want to come back here. This is so awful. And I remember when I saw Dr. Bill, the director, I like ran up to him and was like, listen, I need to talk to you. And I was like, they're talking about being here 7 times. I don't ever want to come back here. Like, I don't ever want to come back here. Am I going to have to come back here? And he said to me, you're not going to have to come back here. If you do the work, you're not going to have to come back here. and not everybody wants to do the work or is willing to do the work. And I was like, I'll do it. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll do anything. Like, but I was so afraid that my life was going to be this in and out of like programs and they were just like, yeah, I've been here 5 times. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't even want to be here another day. Like, how could you come? So, you know, it was certainly an interesting experience.
But then again, it allowed you to be taken out into a more or less protective bubble where you could focus on your healing and you were not living in the same old and now have to heal on top. So it is an inpatient program can be such a
oh my gosh,
powerful thing.
I think I would highly recommend that it's not like, you know, I think I looked at it like my level of crazy was basically determined by the intervention necessary to deal with it. So for me to go inpatient meant you are so crazy that you have to go away. And it was like, oh, no, because my biggest fear for many years was that I was just crazy. And when I went inpatient, one of the first things they had us to do was read this article about, you know, thinking that you make up your memories and thinking that you're crazy. And I was so relieved. I couldn't believe, you know, because you think you're the only one. It's going on in your head. You're the only one. I mean, I read that and I was like, oh my God, like they get it. They really understand how I feel here. And I'm not crazy. And it was such a relief to feel like I'm not crazy. I'm just wounded.
Oh, what a beautiful, the way you describe it. It's just the same with me. The first day in rehab, I walked in and there was this big Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And I thought, wow, have they written that just for me? How did they know how I feel? And it is just, what? And it was, wow, yeah. It was a huge revelation, a beautiful thing. And to feel that you are not alone. I think that was for me the biggest thing.
Such, I felt that, I think like my body must have been like, whew. I was so relieved. I was just so relieved that somebody, because, you know, it's really hard when you're in those positions to speak to your family who are most likely part of the abusers. You know, they're just telling you you're nuts, blah, blah, blah. So you just question yourself. So to go somewhere where I felt really safe, seen, and supported was, and I think everybody deserves that. I know I even have friends who just like still struggle and refuse to like do that. And it's like, don't shortchange yourself. It's not it is not an indication of your level of crazy. It's an indication of your bravery and your desire to do something that's important for yourself. Nobody says, I mean, you got open heart surgery and you're still in the hospital. What's wrong with your body, right? But this is the same thing. You know what I mean? My God, get up and walk. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sorry, but I just had open heart surgery.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with this. Like, you're going somewhere to heal your broken heart and your soul.
And to actually let yourself heal. It is, you don't go once to the gym and suddenly I'm magically fit. Okay. So it takes a little while.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is definitely a commitment to a way of living differently, of caring for yourself and knowing that you deserve to be cared for.
Indeed. Oh, yeah, it's so beautiful to hear your words there. But these words come out of what? 30 years of trauma. So the quarter of a century and then some.
Oh, yeah.
So let's actually be quite clear. So you've got basically a quarter of a century where your body and your mind were suffering, and you came up with some kind of ad hoc oh, that feels good. Oh, cool. What did I just do? Oh, I made love to this guy. Brilliant. More guys, bring the guys on. That makes me feel good. Okay, so that's right, and that was one escape mechanisms. Many others were there for sure too.
Oh yeah,
And
oh yeah.
that's all for us. So here you are. Your body has been conditioned. It had those habits deeply ingrained because they served you at that time. They
Yes.
helped you to escape. They helped you to feel what you needed to feel. And do you really think that 2 weeks or 4 weeks in an inpatient program, however perfect the program is, do you really think that can compete with quarter of a century of habit forming?
Yeah. Yeah, because I went inpatient when I was 37. Yeah, I was, well, it was like 37 or 30. But I was in my like mid 30s, earlier mid 30s. So it was a long time of my body and my mind and my poor broken little spirit, so it doesn't, as much as we want it to get better yesterday and overnight, it takes time, and it's worth the time that you put into it. I can't imagine my life being any different today, and I would do it over again, because I think too that I really felt at the time that I was like the weirdo of the world, so to speak. And I don't know how else to say it, but like the more work I've done in my recovery, the more I realized that it was actually more like normal then than I am now. And I'm like, the eye-opening of like, I mean, I did literally used to go around, I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. And now I'm like, oh, no, thanks. I'll pass on that. That's there's so many people living in trauma. Oh my God, it's just like you must know as a doctor. You're like, yep, you can see it. It's like,
I think we need to normalize trauma, because we, in every single life around this world, there will be trauma of different magnitudes.
right.
But then again, this is not a pissing contest, okay? It is whatever the trauma is for you, it has implications for you.
Right.
So yes, your cat has died. And you think, yeah, so what? If that
Sad.
cat was the only thing that actually kept you sane, because there were so many other things happening in your life, and that cat was it, I mean, this will be a very different implication compared with if you've got a cattery and you've got 50 cats.
Right. Well, right. And you're like, whatever, but that it's true. I don't, I think it absolutely needs to be normal, the stigma of trauma.
Yeah.
And I think the message that I always try to tell people is, and I think this was something I learned over the years, obviously, but is that just being traumatized doesn't mean that you're unlovable. It doesn't mean that you're unworthy, and for me, it was like, if I was sexually abused, then that meant like, what does that mean? And it was like, oh my God, my parents didn't love me. Now, who wants to think their parents didn't love them? That's a horrible, and so I think when I tell people all the time, it's like, being traumatized does not have anything to do with your level of ability to love or be loved, or you are still lovable. You are still worthy. You are still a child of God. That this is something that happened to you. For God's sake, they put Jesus on a cross. Like, does that mean all of a sudden, like, oh, he's just a piece of crap? It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, what happens to you is not a determination of your level of worth or lovable, ability to love or be loved. And so that, I think, was my biggest thing, was like, I must be a piece of crap if I was abused. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with you. That is about your abuser. Even my father, when I talked to him before he died about what happened, he said to me, this was never your fault. And I was like, yeah, I know that, Daddy, but that didn't change the way my life. But the point is, it's not, the abuse is never your fault. Unfortunately, the healing is our responsibility, but the abuse is not your fault.
Beautifully said. Wow, that blows me away that your father said that.
Yeah, it's funny because my therapist at the time was just like, I wouldn't have that conversation with him. And I knew that he was dying, and I knew he had fallen in like October, and this might've been that early, that winter. But I just felt like while he was still alive, and he wasn't like dying on his hospital bed when we had this conversation, we were like in his kitchen, and he was walking around, and he was, when we sat down, part of me really wanted to know that this was the truth of what happened, because it was still so incredibly, like, the fact that it happened, the fact that it happened to me, the fact that I couldn't remember it, the fact that it impacted my life so much. I really wanted to like hear from him, like, this really happened, And when, he said that, it was very helpful. And I actually said it, I had them to talk with him because I knew he was dying. I knew he was like 97. He had fallen. It just seemed to me like something, and I wanted to be able to say to myself, I had this conversation with him before, while I could still have it. And I was very concerned that I knew he was always afraid of dying. And I knew that if this had happened, and I wanted confirmation of it, so to speak, which I already kind of knew, but it just would help. I didn't want him to be dying and afraid that he was going to die and go to hell. Because I knew as a strong Catholic, he was probably feeling deathly afraid, knowing what he did. And so I wanted him to know that I forgave him, and that if I could forgive him, that God could forgive him if he would say he was sorry.
Why did you forgive him?
I think part of why I forgave him at the time was probably because I really felt like, it wasn't like I forgave him and then jumped back into his arms of like, now let's be best friends. You know what I mean? But I felt like, I knew what his experience of dying must be like. And I really felt like it was scary for me too, because I know when I was laying there after taking a bottle of pills, thinking I'm going to die and go to hell, how frightening that is. And I really didn't want him to be afraid. And I wanted him to know that I could forgive him. I didn't mean that I wasn't angry anymore. It didn't mean that I wasn't upset. It didn't mean that I wasn't hurt. But I had also learned that, abusers are usually abused, and I knew that most likely he had been abused growing up. Something must have happened to him, and I'm not excusing him, believe me, an explanation is not an excuse. There's two different things, but it was important for me to be able to have that. And I think too, just the other thing really, Stefan, is that at the time, I think I really wanted a connection with my dad. Like I had a close connection to an extent, but I think it might have even been a bit of a like weird trauma response of sorts of like, Daddy, please love me. I don't know, but it's a complicated answer.
Absolutely. But I'm so pleased what you said there, because that is the question, how do you deal with that? And you go through such waves of extremes. You think, oh no, he's the worst possible thing, and then on the other side, you suddenly have got the realization, well, probably he was abused, and then you try to imagine his childhood, and suddenly you think, now I can understand it, and you go to the extreme of, oh no, it's all good, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's such a complex issue. There is this,
and he was dying at the time too, so I know like that. It was a different, it wasn't like I was 20 and he was 50. And, I don't know if that had been the time, the age of what at the time of what we were dealing with, that I would have been able to be like, oh, I'm going to be like, have this happy, loving relationship with this, you know what I mean? But I think that also played a big role in like why I did what I did when I did, but I did it because I wanted to be able to say that I had a conversation. I wanted to be able to say I tried. And it meant, it was important to me.
That's so beautiful, because that's the other aspect to it, that you come to terms with whatever has happened to you. The past does not equal the future.
Right.
And this was clearly trauma of the past. And it is such a beautiful thing if you can bring closure to it, because it has happened. You can't talk it away. You can't wish it away.
Right.
It has happened. So it's the question, how can you deal with it? And can you stop the spiral of new things coming out of, or negative things morphing out of that previous trauma? And can you actually put that baby to bed and actually now say, okay, enough is enough. Who is the new me? Yes, there is all this trauma in my past, and it doesn't define me, but I take it as a catalyst. I take it as something that pushes me forward, as something that I now go out and maybe, like you, go out and help others to understand. You make sense of your trauma. You move on. You are creating a new you, however that new you looks like, a new and improved version. And that is so beautiful. I mean, that is the secret to success in recovery, that we accept, okay, that the past is the past. And maybe you have done awful things, or maybe you were the victim of awful things, or both. And okay, so now it's time to take a hard look at that, deal with what you can, and then say, okay, this was the past. I think I've dealt with that, and now let's create a future that is better, and that maybe where I can implement the lessons that I've learned and help others to live a life where it's less likely that the same trauma will happen to them. I think that is how I see my story. That's virtually how I hear every story of those beautiful people that come onto my show. We are all wounded animals who have licked our wounds at one time or the other, and who are now, those people who are now coming on my show, they are determined to make sense out of their suffering and assure that others don't suffer as long. We all do suffer, but maybe we can jumpstart you. Maybe we can actually plant that seed into you, and you actually realize, shit, time for me to go onto that journey.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Oh, Gina, I'm so pleased of you sharing all this. I'm so honored and humbled, because this is in the past you would have hidden somewhere.
Oh my gosh, I did. I don't know if you can see this picture behind me, but that is I can't draw. I mean, I really can't draw. I can sing really well, but I can't draw. So I drew this a couple of years ago. This was several years ago. And I wrote a big outline of me. And I put all the things that I was hiding, that I felt ashamed of still. Like all that, I mean, sleeping around, being told I was unfit when I was a teacher, I mean, anything and everything, the beliefs I had about myself. And I decided to like color it in. And when I colored around the circles of all the things I wrote, I kind of stepped back and I was like, well, look at how that shaped who I am. And I think, what did I write on the top? I said, I am okay with all of me. My scars helped create who I am.
Perfect.
And so it was a really great way for me to feel like and the thing too that I started realizing is that there's nothing up there that other people don't already feel or haven't already done, like I'm not alone in that. Like, and it was like, all of a sudden my scars weren't something to be ashamed of, but something to be proud of, that like I overcame and was able to recognize, oh, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and I don't have to, and I think that's the other thing in recovery that's so important, is to be able to be humble enough to say, yeah, I did this or I said that, and I don't know anything different, but I know that this wasn't helpful. And so I want to learn something different, because for so long I was so defensive, no, everything was like, I was sexually abused. I'm a victim. No, you don't know. Like, I can do whatever I want. Like, you don't understand. Like, I get to do what I want because I'm like this victim. And like, I really believed that, I just thought I can do anything because like I am, the worst thing happened to me in the world. So you just leave me alone and let me like be, and then I went to the place of like, oh, no, I'm a survivor. And like, everything was about, oh, now I'm a sexual abuse survivor. And like, everything was about being a survivor. And my therapist said to me, do you know, like everything you talk about is related to your abuse? And I was like, really? And she's like, isn't there more to you than that? And I was like, yeah. And I mean, I went home and I created this little outline. It was like, all these different parts of me. I'm not just a sexual abuse survivor. I'm not just a mother. I'm not just a wife. I'm not just a victim, and there was, and it all of a sudden kind of came together. It was like, this is a part of me.
Cool. And that is so beautiful. I mean, that is like,
oh, look at who I am. I'm pretty cool.
And what a beautiful realization it is. And what a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And that's exactly how I feel. It's exactly how many others feel. And guys out there, if you listen to that and you think, how the hell could that possibly happen? With taking one tiny little step in the right direction. And then following through and doing another little tiny step. This is not a quick fix, but there is, whatever has occurred to you, then I can assure you there is a different life waiting for you if you're happy to work at it and start building. I mean, if you create a new life, that's like building a house. You need to put some decent foundations down, and then it takes some time. You just don't look away and look back, oh, there's my house. So no, that takes a few months to actually build a house.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
it takes planning and all that, very intentional. Indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same with your recovery. It's the same with your happiness, with the same with you finding love with the most important person in the whole game, which is you. To actually learn to love yourself, warts and all, scars and all, is the key to everything. And it took me 45 years, at least 47 probably, until I started the journey. And there's so much still. My journey is ongoing.
I always think, oh no, I've got this whole under, and that's how I felt when I started having the flashbacks of being sexually abused, because I had I guess it was like 10, I had probably 7 years of recovery under my belt. And I was like, no, man, I got, and I was like, what the hell? This isn't supposed to happen. The worst has already happened. I mean, I was like, I have to do this all over. Are you freaking kidding me? This sucks. This is horrible. And I think, the other thing, Stefan, that I like to tell people is that, you can love yourself and still not like certain things about yourself. Because I had this thing of oh, no. I love myself. I'm so I love myself. It's everything about me I love. And when I realized, well, no, wait a minute. I love my husband, but I don't like everything about him. There are things I don't like, things that get on my nerves, but it's I can still love myself and not well, okay, maybe I don't really like the way my face looks or something, or maybe my hair is a mess. But it doesn't mean that I can't still love myself. And I think there's a big distinction between loving somebody doesn't necessarily mean you like everything about them. You know what I mean? So it's just learning that it's a gray area, you know what I mean? Just, finding the middle ground, so to speak, of loving yourself and realizing that. I mean, that was one of the big things for me, because I didn't want to join a gym, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh no, does this mean that I don't love myself? And my therapist was like, but I mean, it's okay if you don't like certain things about yourself. And I was like, No way, really? Oh, okay. So I don't really like this, but I can still love myself and go. And so it's like because I have these high expectations for myself, having all these years in recovery of like, no. Now that I'm like 18 years in recovery, I should be like, waking up in my morning and my like using my bamboo straw and like getting my organic tea out of my backyard that I grow in like hypersonic, hydrolonic, and then I like wear my fair trade clothes and you know what I mean? And it's like, I can't live like that. Like these expectations I have for myself are unrealistic. I can do what I can, but I literally have these like, oh, no. If I'm really like in recovery, like I should be living like this. Like nobody lives like that. And if you do, I don't care what you say, you're a control freak about something.
Correct. And that's okay. And it just shows that there are constant realizations where we have gone off that path, and where it is a very meandering path, the path to happiness, and it is and sometimes it goes in loops.
I know. That's a good point. It does totally go. I'm like, no, wait a minute.
Exactly.
I think I've been here before.
I know.
It's very familiar.
I know, isn't it? And that's good. That's okay too, because obviously you need it.
At least I can realize it now, right? You know what I mean? Like before, I used to just go around and around and around and blame everybody else. And go, what are you doing here?
I did my rehab, and I dealt with my alcoholism and my way of trying to escape my reality. I started to learn about my emotions. That was all pretty. It took me another 5-6 years down the line until I finally realized that I had a good bout of PTSD. Not bout. I had a life of PTSD. Right. And that many of my actions and many of my core beliefs were essentially signs and symptoms of PTSD.
Yeah.
And you think, and that was now 2-3 years ago, and I was there and thought, you're kidding me. And it was, but it is good. And to a certain degree, I got to have that realization, and I got to reevaluate my life now with a new set of glasses with a bit of sharper dioptries in there. I think, okay. So this is actually, whilst I was initially a bit, now I see it as a positive thing. And to a certain degree, I'm actually looking forward to the next realization, because it only means that I've got a new opportunity to grow, a new opportunity to change myself towards a something that is more valid in my current belief system, more beautiful, I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to be, every day where I don't learn is a wasted day for me. So therefore, this is a beautiful journey, and you are on it. I mean, you are exploring and living it, and you're going out there. And I think with every client you see, with every person you help, I think there will be realizations that you get back. So it's sometimes
I know it's somebody said to me once, we teach what we need to know, or something like that. Oh, that's interesting,
isn't it?
I mean, you think you know it all. No. And I really used to think that all my teachers had it all together. Like they didn't. And when I realized, oh no. Like nobody ever like has it all together. Like I may know how to implement something that you don't know, but it doesn't mean that I always like use the tool. And I'm always like I said, I'm not going to get up and drink out of my bamboo straw and go in my organic, or like, I'm not,
exactly.
It doesn't mean I'm no good. It just means I've been like, my expectations for myself have become much more realistic, and I can be okay with that.
Gina, you're an amazing woman, and there's some amazing insights there. There's no two ways around that. Look, if people really like what they heard from you and loved your style of honesty, which is gorgeous, how can they get hold of you? How can they find you?
They can find me by going to my website, GinaRolkowski.com. That's ROLKOWSKI, and it's Gina, GINA. They can find me there. You can also find me on Instagram or Pinterest, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So you can find me in any of those places as well.
Cool. Have a look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. I've got everything down there, so you can easily just copy and paste or click onto it. Gina, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful, awe-inspiring, and it was an interview that made me think and that made me realize things, and for that I'm grateful, because you just paraphrased certain things, and I suddenly thought, okay. And these are the most beautiful interviews when I go away. Okay, I've learned something. I've learned something about myself, about a feeling in me, about how I responded emotionally to what you said. Okay. So, no, brilliant. And I hope
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to connect with you.
And likewise. And I think this will not be the last time that we work together. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do to make this world a little bit better, one interview at a time. Yes. And so hopefully for you out there, guys, go out there, live your day to the fullest. Use every second, and because you've got a choice to make in that second. Either you're working towards recovery, towards a better life, or you're working towards relapse, or towards reinforcing maybe things that don't suit you so well. So it's your choice. You've got right now a choice to, for example, press that subscribe button down there. Now that's a damn good choice.
That's
another choice. Exactly.
I'm going to say yes to that.
Or you might even choose to actually go out to friends and say, hey, this dude is not bad, his show, and there might be actually something you can learn. So tell your friends about it, because there's like today, Gina, she is gorgeous, and I was very, very, very grateful to have her on my show. No two ways around it. Gina, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And you guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.